All right, this is a review of the assignment we did on Monday, October 2nd, 2023. It was an A-Day, by the way. The instructions for the first part said, write the place value of the underlined digit, round each number to the place of the underlined digit. So there were two answers for every single problem. The first answer is going to be the place value of the underlined digit. Well, the 7 is directly behind the decimal point, so that's in the tenths place. Now we're rounding to the tenths place. So I look behind it is an 8. If the number in the hundredths place is 5 or greater, we add 1 to the place we're rounding, which is the tenths place. So I'm going to add 1 here, and my answer is 8/10. Now if you wanted to write, I would accept either of those. But this is the answer to problem number 1. You have to say the place value and you have to have rounded it. The second problem, we have 4 and 71 thousandths. The 7 is in the hundredths place. And to round to the hundredths place, I look behind it. Behind it, I have a 1. If the number in the thousandths place is 5 or greater, I add 1 to my 7. Since it is not, I leave my 7 the same. And so this would be my answer to the second one. 21 and 939 thousandths. We're rounding to the ones place. We're looking behind into the tenths place. If the number behind is 5 or greater, I add 1 to the ones place. So I'd add 1 and my answer is 22. Or if you put 22, I would accept either of those. But the answer is 22. I don't have any of these numbers. Don't go down here. Okay? 8 and 155 thousandths. The 1 is in the tenths place. I look behind the tenths place into the hundredths place. The hundredths place has a 5. If the number in the hundredths place is 5 or greater, I add 1 to the place I'm rounding, which is the tenths place, and I get 8 and 2/10. 8 and 2/10. This one, I'm rounding to the tens place. The tens place, 2 places in front of the decimal point. That means I look at the ones place. Since the number behind the tens place in the ones place is a 4, that means I leave the tens place exactly where it is, and it's going to be rounded to 30. The last one here, I have the 7 is in the hundredths place. So my answer would be hundredths. I take and I look into the thousandths place. The thousandth place is a 6, so that means I add 1 to the hundredths place, and I would get 4 and 28 hundredths. 4 and 28 hundredths. Now we had 2 other sets of problems that we had to do where they gave us a number and we had to round to the different place values for that number. So in the first set, they said we had the number, I'm going to look, I'm going to have to move you. We had the number 8 and 293 thousandths. And we had to round first to the hundredths. And then to the tenths. And then to the ones. All right, so the hundredths. The 9 is in the hundredths. I look behind the 9. The number behind the 9 in the thousandths place is a 3. So my number here is going to be 8 and 29 hundredths. The tenths. The 2 is in the tenths place, so I look behind it in the hundredths place. The number behind it is a 9, so that's 5 or greater. So I would add 1 to my 2, and I'm going to get 8 and 3/10. The ones place. The ones place is right here. I look behind it into the tenths place. Behind it is a 2. So the ones place, it just stays in 8. Okay, the next one we have 12 and 462 thousandths. 12 and 462 thousandths. We are rounding to the tenths, the hundredths. So the tenths, hundredths, and then to the ones place or whole number. All right. So the tenths place, the 4 is in the tenths place. When we're rounding to the tenths place, we look behind it in the hundredths place, and that tells us we'll have to add 1 to my tenths place. So as far as tenths, I'm going to get 12 and 5/10. For the hundredths place, I'm looking, the 6 is in the hundredths place. I look behind it, I see there's a 2 behind it, so that 6 is going to stay the same. And for the hundredths, it's going to be 12 and 46 hundredths. The ones place is the 2. I look behind it, studying. Behind it, I have a 4, so it's going to stay 12. All right, when you're done, come see me. Thank you.